What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Angry Spud. In today's Spud Reacts, we are headed back over to Germany with Visual Economic to understand the 4 reasons that made Germany a great European power. Now, I do know Germany has a dominant economic system. They're like literally one of the top in the world as far as engineering and whatnot. I mean, you see it with the cars all day long. But we are going to check out these 4 main reasons. So, without further ado, let's dive in.
It's the country with the largest economy in Europe, the country with the lowest youth unemployment rates in the European Union, the 4th largest economy in the world, and undoubtedly the great leader in the old continent in the last 20 years. For Visual Economic viewers, Germany has been a shining example of economic development in recent decades. In this video, we will explain the reasons why Germany has become Europe's superpower. We will tell you why its economy works so well, why its companies are the most competitive on the continent, and we will also discuss how the German nation was able to become even richer during the financial crisis of 2008. But pay attention, this video is not just going to be another video about how free markets, low taxes, and liberal policies have been the winning formula for the development of the country in question. None of that.
Some may argue that. So I'm thinking, because Germany, the country is relatively big in size, and I'm trying to think of the other ones like around it. I think like Spain, that's kind of big. France is kind of big. It's kind of like all the same size, I would say. So I wonder if it's really the German person is what separates them.
As much as it may surprise some of you, and unlike other prosperous countries such as Switzerland, Ireland, or even Estonia, Germany is a very interventionist country, even at the level of southern European countries such as Spain or Italy. Do you want some concrete examples? To help you see what I mean, take a look at this table. What you're seeing right now is the difference between gross salary and net salary. That is,
let me see this. Gross salary. Wow. So literally Germany overall. Incredible.
After taxes between Spain and Germany. The first conclusion is very clear. Germany has much higher taxes on labor than a country like Spain, where they are not exactly low, by the way. To give you an idea of the magnitude of what we're talking about, German social security contributions alone account for almost 40% of the total wage costs of companies. But if we add income tax to that, the result is that German workers end up paying close to 50% of their salary in taxes. And of course,
well, see, now that when you automatically hear that on and read that on paper, it sounds so bad, but it's what you do with the money that makes all the difference. Now, I know in Germany, you could go to university for free, right? Literally anybody, doesn't even matter the age. A lot of people don't like that. I think that's actually fantastic, but it really depends on how you spend the money. So if this money is going in the places where it actually needs to go to, it's utilized very well, people probably are not going to complain.
Let's not forget the additional taxes such as VAT, wealth transfer taxes, or the corporate income tax, which exceeds 30% and is also one of the highest in Europe. Come on, it's a real...
So it's like 15.8 for the, what was that, for the standard tax? Standard corporate rate tax. I mean, literally for an individual, if you, here in America, if you want to work and run your own business, there's like a self-employment tax. I think it's like 15.3. Just if you want to work by yourself. That's crazy.
Corporate income tax, which exceeds 30% and is also one of the highest in Europe. Come on, it's a real drain. However, don't think that the interventionism of the German state is limited to taxation. Far from it.
We got to spend the money well. I mean, look at the cities. For example,
the German minimum wage is also one of the highest in Europe, reaching 1,600 euros per month. On top of that, the bureaucratic hurdles are not exactly light either. For example, as you can see, they make this country one of the slowest countries when it comes to setting up a new company. And if we consult the OECD's Doing Business ranking, we will see that Germany is also one of the developed countries with the least legal resources for small investors, with the most administrative complexity for foreign trade, and with one of the worst bureaucratic structures in its property registries. In short, Germany is anything but a capitalist and free market paradise. And let's see, I imagine that in this situation, many of you are wondering about a few things. If it wasn't with free markets and low taxes, how is it possible that Germany has become so rich? What is the recipe for its enormous success? Could other countries imitate its model? So, without further ado, let's answer these questions. Let's get started.
That's what I was wondering. Is it going to be because it's the German person, the personality?
If we want to talk about Germany's economic success, there is one thing we cannot forget. Germany was the big loser of World War II. And yes, I know this may seem obvious and insignificant, but think about it. After the war, Germany was a country that ended up in pieces. Its institutions were destroyed. Its territory and citizens were divided between East and West. And as if that were not enough, the whole country was condemned to pay $20 billion of the time in war reparations. However, despite all this, only 20 years after the Second World War, Germany had already overtaken France and the United Kingdom economically, becoming the leading economic power in Europe. Knowing this, the first question we have to answer seems very clear. How on earth could such a war-torn country end up becoming the continent's leading power in just 20 years? Well, visual economic viewers, the first answer can be found in the following map. For virtually all of modern history, since the Industrial Revolution, Germany, or at least what we know today as Germany, was one of the parts of Europe with the largest number of people with access to education. In fact, according to various sources we have consulted, back in the 19th century, the German region had higher literacy rates than even the United Kingdom of the Industrial Revolution. More than 80% of the young Germans were in school until they were at least 14 years old. Trust me, this is a lot for the 19th century. The point is that, unlike in other regions of Europe, where education was focused on the elite, the bourgeoisie, and the nobility, in Germany the opposite was true. In Germany, the education system was universal. Education was designed so that even the poorest could have access to knowledge and professional training. But
I love that. I know it's obviously here in America, it's only certain people could do it, especially like when the whole civil rights movement. But I think that's incredible to have even the poor people being able to access, education and whatnot, because I think that allows the city to thrive in a sense.
But why is this so important? Well, it is important because until World War II, Germany was a country based on industry. And not just any industry, but the most competitive and innovative industry in the world. At that time, Germany was the country with the highest number of patents in Europe. Germany invented things like the automobile, diesel engines, medicines like aspirin, Siemens blast furnaces, the electron microscope, and even the first computer in history, Konrad Zuse's Z1, which you can see in the image. The thing is, all these inventions and competitive industries would not have been possible without citizens very well trained in subjects such as mathematics, chemistry, and physics. In fact, if you go to the list of Nobel Prizes at the beginning of the 20th century, you will see that Germany takes the grand prize in all these categories. Come on, they are the real dynamos in education.
Yeah.
But be careful.
Engineering, math, all of it.
The end of the story. Apart from having a very well-educated population, Germany also has a very strong business sector that was protected and encouraged by the government for years. For example, by forcing investors who invested in other countries to invest the same amount of money in Germany, or by allowing large companies to form cartels with which to dominate the market.
So they made them
the entire
invest
German
in
region
Germany.
had good access to raw materials such as coal, iron, and maritime resources, and also had an outstanding geographical position that allowed it to do business with a multitude of countries, especially when exporting the products of its huge and protected industry. In short, until the middle of the 20th century, Germany was a leading country with gigantic, highly innovative companies and the best educated population in the world. What could go wrong? Well, the Second World War.
Yeah.
The war came, and with it the destruction and devastation of the country that we have just described. However, Germany was able to recover very quickly. We've already seen that within 20 years, the German nation was once again the leader in Europe. And do you know why? Well, because despite the war and all the destruction caused, the highly educated citizens, the entrepreneurs with their successful formulas, the patents.
That's what I was saying. Like, all the citizens are highly educated. It doesn't matter if they're rich or poor. And when you have a collective, whole that's everybody is educated, you're going to thrive. That's just how it works.
And the German productive culture remained intact. Let's say that all the ingredients of German success were still there, in spite of the war. In other words, it only took the time to rebuild infrastructure, buildings, and legal certainty before the German economy was able to take off again. Now, the interesting thing about all this is that the model of German success, which allowed them to recover from the war, has remained practically unchanged to this day. Even though almost 100 years have passed since all that we have described so far, the truth is that today's Germany looks like a modern copy of what it was in previous centuries. For example, what is their main business sector? Well, once again, advanced industry with high rates of innovation and scientific development. I think that in this case, a graph is the best illustration. Take a look. In 2020 alone, German companies and the German government invested more than 100 billion euros in research and development, a figure that is equivalent to more than 3% of GDP, and doubles the figures of countries such as Italy, Italy, or the United Kingdom.
That makes
Meanwhile,
sense.
its education sector tells a very similar story.
All the other countries were spending it on tourism, probably.
Germans are one of the populations with the highest average years of schooling. As you can see in this graph, this allows companies to grow and develop much more than in other countries with less education. In addition, the German education
What was that? Norway and Sweden, though. Norway and Sweden are up there at the top with the USA as well. Huh. Okay. Share of employment companies with more than 250 workers. Huh. And then years of schooling per adult. Interesting.
to grow and developed much more than in other countries with less education.
Yeah,
in
I was about to
addition,
say,
the German
less
education
years,
system has a
but still at the top.
very productivity-focused model. To give you an idea, German children are separated into 3 different types of schools from a very young age, according to their academic ability. That is, they put the children with the good grades together and separate them from those with poorer grades. This could be a problem at a social or inequality level, but at the same time, it has a great advantage. The fact
Yeah, that actually reminds me. That's a good point. That reminds me of when you take all the, well, coming from a track perspective when I used to run, all the fast people, you would really put them all in the same heat to see, how fast they would go, because everybody's going to push everybody else to go faster, and you're going to try it, especially when you're going to go against people who are actually faster. Now, when you take like one good person and put them in a slower heat, they're not really competing against anybody. They're just running against themselves, and they're not going to be able to push themselves faster. Whereas all the other people, they're going to try to run faster because they're trying to catch up. Now, it puts that person in the front at a disadvantage. So when you put them with people that are on their level, yeah, it makes it a lot better.
fact is that German children with the greatest academic potential, being all together, can be given more advanced curricula with which to make better use of their abilities, so that in the future, they can be the best engineers, physicists, or mathematicians working in innovative German companies. Now, does this mean that the rest of the less outstanding students are doomed to fail in school? No, that's not what we mean at all. Take a look.
Yeah.
Half of all youngsters in upper secondary school are in vocational training, and half of these are in apprenticeships. Andreas Wargotter, head of country studies at the OECD.
A large proportion.
Yeah, it's funny because you think about, okay, so what about the ones that didn't make it? It's not like they're not smart. They're still really smart, and probably a lot smarter than the average person, I don't know, student here in America. It's just crazy to think about.
Of the young people who do not go to university in Germany prepare themselves through vocational training, a type of training that is highly adapted to the needs of the labour market, which trains young people in specific technical tasks that are much needed, and which also combines study with learning directly on the job. The German educational model is completely oriented to the labour market and the productive needs of the country.
I think that's important.
This is precisely the first
actual
reason for the
needs
great
of the
success of
country.
German industry, and thus of the German economy, its unique education system. The second reason has already been mentioned. Germany has a centuries-old tradition of entrepreneurship, innovation, and industry, which has been snowballing until present day. An entrepreneurial tradition that would be difficult to transfer to other countries, and which practically makes Germany a unique case study in the world. Be that as it may, these two reasons would be of no use without a third and fourth reason that we have not yet explained. They are perhaps the most important reasons of all. Reasons that have enabled Germany to maintain and expand its enormous industry and economic strength over the years. Do you want to know what we are talking about?
Yes.
Well, stay tuned.
Surviving the surge.
If a country has an enormous industrial tradition, even if it is very rich, even if the citizens are the most educated in the world, all this is of no use if its government throws it all away. A good example of this are countries such as Argentina and Venezuela. These countries once competed with the USA itself in economic terms for much of the 20th century. Recently on Visual Politic, we told you how Argentina came to compete with Switzerland and even became the richest country in the world for a time. However, with populist government after populist government, they have ended up with deep and long economic crises. Fortunately, the opposite was true in post-World War II Germany. If German politics in recent decades has stood out for anything, it has been precisely for its enormous stability, its great consensus, and the absence of large populist movements sowing discord and polarization. For example, the main parties of the left and the right have come to govern in coalition when they have not had an absolute majority, something that in other countries would be totally unthinkable. What's more, the stability and political consensus is not something that has been limited to the partisan sphere, but has also been very present in civil organizations. But do you want a concrete case? Well, take for instance the case of the trade union groups.
I bet trades are a huge deal there.
You see, unlike in other countries, where trade unions are little more than enemies of the companies and extensions of leftist political parties, in Germany, trade unions are closely linked to business circles. What's more, German trade union groups even have representatives in the management and governing bodies of the companies. Thanks to this, both unions and companies can work as a team to seek a joint benefit. There is a dialogue. It is not a question of battling like cats and dogs, nor of seeing who is more radical than the other. But why is the political stability and the absence of radical movements so important? The answer lies in the long term. With radicalized and populist political groups, the objective of those in power is to achieve results and votes in the short term, whereas with united political groups that seek consensus, it is much easier to carry out policies that pursue long-term objectives. And a great example of this was the German plan called Agenda 2010, a plan promoted by Social Democrat Chancellor Gerhard Schröder in 2001, which served to save Germany from the 2008 crisis. By the way, we will talk more in depth on this topic in a future video, so subscribe.
I think in Germany too, you work
But in
less
short,
hours.
this plan
I
was
feel
something like a great political
remember
consensus, whereby tax cuts, the relaxation of recruiting procedures, and reforms in the unemployment aid systems were agreed upon, with the aim of cleaning up the country's economic capacity. A country that at the end of the 90s, as you can see on the screen, was not going through the best of times. What's more, at that time, Germany was known as the sick man of Europe, because of the huge crisis it was experiencing. How things have changed, right? Be that as it may, at the same time as German politicians carried out the 2010 Agenda program, trade unions and employers' organizations followed suit. In this case, in order to face the problems of the crisis, the workers agreed not to ask for large salary increases, in exchange for the employers' commitment to reducing the number of layoffs. In short, all these agreements served to find the best possible solution to the problems, a way out that left no one adrift. And again, this is just one example of many, but without a doubt, stability and political consensus have made Germany a very productive state. And that is why we rank these factors as the third reason for Germany's success. Now, this is not over yet. We still have the last reason of all. Pay very, very close attention.
Less bread for today, much more for tomorrow.
That's a good
In
concept.
Germany, the word for debt is Schulden, which in turn comes from the word Schuld. And do you know what Schuld means? It means guilt. Germans don't like going into debt at all. They are practically phobic about asking others for money. And the truth is that this has certain advantages. On the one hand, and as you can see on the screen, during periods of crisis, such as that of 2008, or the
Okay, if you are German, how true is that? I know nobody likes going into debt, but everybody in theory does it. But in Germany, is this exceptionally true? That's like the worst thing you can do is go into debt? Let me know.
the one suffered after the war in Ukraine. German companies had a much lower indebtedness than those of other countries, such as the US or France. This allowed them to hold out much better. The German government, on the other hand, has also been characterized by maintaining strict control over its public finances. Germany's public debt has remained much lower over time than that of other countries, such as Italy, Spain, or France. Again, this has allowed the country to be able to spend money when times were bad, and has allowed it not to drown its public accounts with higher and higher interest payments. However, all this financial health, beyond helping the Germans to weather the storm when the going gets tough, has also served to reap a second great advantage. Do you remember this graph? We used it to explain that Germany is one of the countries with the highest R&D investment in the world. Well, if this investment in German R&D is so large, it is precisely because both companies and the government, thanks to their financial health, can afford to make major investments in development. More specifically, public institutions have promoted major R&D intensification
through
plans,
the taxes,
such as the German government's high-tech strategy, which has been decisive for the country's technological development. These plans have served to support and promote small, medium, and large companies, such as Bosch or the Schaeffler Group. Companies that, as a study by BBVA
Bosch.
Research...
Isn't that for cars? I think that's what that is, because I remember working on cars when I was younger, you get the Bosch, spark plugs. I think that's right. Let me know if I'm right about that.
Those are the largest creators of jobs and patents. So that brings us to the fourth element in Germany's recipe for success. It is precisely its ability to keep both public and private finances under control, and to leverage its resources to invest in and boost its advanced industrial sector.
So really, it's just like I imagined, per se. I mean, the education is remarkable here. I mean, the manufacturing, the industrial, cars, everything. I mean, the buildings, the technology, the inventions, it's all top tier. And then when you have people who constantly want to learn and really give their all to their work just because that's their work ethic, you're gonna have a top tier society. And when it comes to leveraging, I believe is what he was talking about, you're taking these smaller investments and you're really, you know, putting them all together to where you can have this huge investment. Or if you do have a huge successful investment, you're sprinkling it down all to the other ones to small to make them grow, and you just keep repeating the process. That's how you become and remain the top country, or one of them. But anyway, this was very informative. I love a lot of the work that was put into this. So if there's anything else you want to mention about this video or add to why Germany's economy is such a great economy, go ahead and let us know down in the comments.